Hey everybody, welcome to Cheap Comic Collector. This is episode number 89. And today we're going to be looking at some of the comic books that I just read today. Starting off, we have the coverless copy of Bugs Bunny that I showed yesterday as part of the haul. And it was a fun issue. Turns out this is Bugs Bunny number 173. It's missing the outer two folds, but it was still a fun issue to read. I'm going to hold on to it and the underdog cover that came with it, just in case I ever run across those issues or run across somebody who has those issues and either needs the centerfold from the Bugs Bunny or the cover from Underdog. So, and I still don't know what, I should have looked up to see what issue number this Underdog cover was from. I didn't think about doing that, but anyway, we're on, and then the first book we're going to dive into is Convergence, the Flash. In a previous episodes, I pretty much panned the Convergence series, but since I've been working my way through the mini-series, some of them have turned out to be really good. And this one is also very, very good. So I've really pretty much changed my mind about the quality of the Convergence series. The mini-series I didn't like that much, but the 2-issue mini-series that they did across the line, some of those are really, really good. So this one has the Barry Allen Flash. Sorry, that's the second issue. We're going to start with the first one. And artwork's really good. I'm not going to go into story too much because I don't like spoiling the stories for anybody. But let's see, Dan Abnett was the writer. Federico Dell'Occhio was the artist, and it is really good art. It's got a nice dynamic to it, and the writing is top-notch. Barry Allen, this might be my favorite story that I've ever read of Barry Allen, actually, because I've never really cared for the Flash as a character when I was growing up, until Wally West took over, and it's an interesting point of view. In the first issue, he's trapped in the under the dome and wrestling with some personal issues of how he feels about that and his personal life, because he can't get back to Iris, who is in the future. And of course, they all lose their powers while they're under the dome, and then eventually the dome is taken away and they have to fight. But that's a nice Flash panel there, and a lot of characterization in this issue. It was really good. And then this guy shows up. I wasn't familiar with him. Apparently, he's the Superman from the Tangent universe, and that's who Barry Allen has to fight. And then in the second issue, they talk for a while and get to know each other a little bit. And then the only thing that I didn't really like about this part is the fight scene just kind of went on and on and on and on for quite a few pages, and it just didn't seem necessary for it to go on for so long. These are just previews of some of the upcoming series. After the Convergence, they started a whole bunch of number ones and things that are all listed in here. And then in the back of the second issues, there's always a preview of another one of the new series. And in this one, it's Suicide Squad. I haven't read the previews. I didn't want to spoil the comics by reading the previews. Unless these are not part of the issues. If these are standalone stories, then that would be different. I'm not sure. But I didn't want to spoil whenever I get around to reading those issues. So, and then next up, but Convergence, I've really changed my mind on. It's good stuff. The miniseries are most of them have been pretty good. And then next up we have Tono and Kono, the Jungle Twins from Gold Key. This is issue number 15 from 1975. And let me see if I can get it so there's not quite so much of a glare on there. And I didn't know what to expect from this. I'd seen covers of these characters, but I didn't know who they were. So I did a little research on them. It looks like this is a feature that Gold Key created when they lost the Tarzan license to DC Comics. So this probably replaced either Tarzan or Korak on the schedule. And basically, this is, like I said, from 1975. So you got these two jungle twins. They both have kind of shaggy 70s rock and roll type haircuts. You can kind of see it in this panel, which was interesting because, you know, their hair would be kind of shaggy and unkempt if they were living in the jungle, I guess. And on this story, they come across mutant monitor lizards that are growing super huge, like 10 feet tall, and can walk on their hind legs, and they're hunting people. And so the whole entire story, the entire issue is of them battling them and tracking them down and figuring out where they came from and so on and so forth. And it's a good issue. It was a fun story. I actually enjoyed it. I was surprised. The artwork is kind of standard for Gold Key I think for that time period. Nothing great, nothing dynamic about it. A little flat, but also suitable. It's not bad art. It's all very, square panels and nothing really jumps out at you about it. But it tells the story. It's adequate. Kind of reminds you of adventure strip newspaper panels, honestly. Just because they never really have a variation from the standard panel layouts. But kind of an abrupt ending. But it was good. I enjoyed it. In fact, I enjoyed everything that I'm looking at today. So it was a fun reading session for me because everything was good and interesting. This is Incredible Hulk number 251. This is from 1980. Really, really good issue of the Incredible Hulk. This might be the best issue of Incredible Hulk that I've ever read. There's just so much going on in it. Got a great cover. I always forget to look up the artist before I do these videos. Darn it. But got a great cover. It's got the Whatever Happened to the 3D Man is the basis of the issue. And let's see, yes, from September 1980 was the cover date. And then it opens with Bruce Banner hiding behind a fence, and these kids are playing with the Hulk. So that's interesting. Bill Mantlo was the author, and Sal Buscema was the artist. And so Bruce Banner gets a little bit scared of these kids because he hears them talking about the Hulk and think that he's been discovered. But they're just playing. They're playing a game with somebody in a Hulk costume. And so this guy is I guess the father of the kids, and he's actually secretly 3D Man. I'm not going to go into the whole 3D Man origin type thing, but basically his brother is actually 3D Man, and he comes alive as 3D Man when this guy basically calls them into existence and goes kind of into a trance and just sits there and is non-responsive. So I'm not exactly sure what that's all about, but that's kind of what happens. I got an ad for Bubble Yum, which I remember getting that stuck in my hair when I was a kid, because I chewed it when I was going to bed at night. My mom had a fit over that. But this is a great issue, and this is why a lot of times I like older comics than newer comics, because the writing is top notch. Look at all the writing, and it wasn't boring. It wasn't, it just had so much going on in this issue. Not only do you have this and the 3D Man coming up, but then you've got the lead-ins to the next issues where this is Rick Jones and some of all the other Hulk friends, and they got a centaur on in their cabin that's dying, and then this guy shows up. This guy turns out to be Wood God, who I'm not familiar with too much. I've heard the name and I've seen his picture before, but I don't really know his backstory. Doc Samson shows up to battle Wood God because he was tracking him and his kind of gypsy band of for lack of a better word, freaks, and then it jumps back into it segues back into the main story, because Rick Jones sends out a call to the Teen Brigade for help, and the son of the 3D Man hears it. And meanwhile, the dad has called the cops because he realized that Bruce Banner is the Hulk. Even though they invited him to stay, he did it to keep him calm so he could turn him into the authorities. And so it goes on from there. I won't say any more because, like I said, I don't like to reveal things. And I've probably already said too much about the issue, but I wanted to show you how much was going on in this issue. There's just a lot of stuff happening, a bunch of characters, and it's fun, And you got some 80s ads, Heroes World with a bunch of merchandise, and the Masterpiece theater type ad with the Hulk from back then, which I always thought was hilarious. And meanwhile, 3D Man and the Hulk are battling it out. And you got the big bucks contest with the Hulk trying to figure out how to enter. And Captain Marvel is saving the day with Hostess Twinkies. And then it kind of wraps up, and you got a letter column at the end of the issue. But a great issue. I really enjoyed it. It was kind of a standalone issue, so I was happy about that I didn't have to dive too much into other issues. And then, last but not least, we got Walt Disney's Comics and Stories number 510 from 1984. And it turns out that this is actually the last Whitman issue before Gladstone continued the numbering a couple years later. So this is from, when I realized this was from 1984, I looked it up because I didn't think they actually published them that late. But this was the last issue, number 510. I looked it up on a price guide online, and in mint condition, it's worth about $20 because the last issues, last 2 or 3 issues of each of the Disney titles had low print runs. They were only in like the bag sets, and by then they were all being phased out, and so they're kind of rare, I guess, or at least people think they are, so they pay up for them. This one's not in mint condition. It's probably worth about $5, but anyway, cool cover. And all these stories in this one were new to the United States. This first one is actually from Denmark, I think. It's done by Daniel Branca, who is a kind of a European successor to Karl Barks. As you can see, the artwork is very reminiscent of Karl Barks' In fact, some of these scenes, I wouldn't be surprised to find out that they weren't, the poses weren't swiped from a Carl Barks story. They're that much like Carl Barks. So the story and the art, very, very reminiscent of Carl Barks' work. Super Goof ad with the train tracks. And the Donald story is the talking dog, which I'm surprised Gladstone never reprinted this one, because it's really good. It's Donald tricks the nephews into thinking they're hurting the hedge by cutting it after he told them to go do it, and with a micro transmitter and a walkie-talkie. And then they turn the tables on him by making him think a dog can talk with the same setup, and it's pretty funny. Barks kind of had the same setup in one of his stories, so but this is good. This is a different story, and it's good. Next story is new. It is The Wolf and the Witch. So Big Bad Wolf enlists the help of the witch from Snow White. I think it's supposed to be the witch from Snow White. She doesn't quite look like her, but it's close enough where I think that's who it's supposed to be. And to try and trap, he gets her to help so he can trap the three little pigs who he's always eternally after. And of course things don't go according to plan. And then there's a Winnie the Pooh strip, which I've never been a big fan of Winnie the Pooh in the comics. I know he had a comic that went for a long time, but like 80 issues or something like that. And I've only seen, I think, one issue of it. I have seen a few backups like this, shorter stories in Walt Disney Comics and stories. Most of them are quite juvenile. This one's a little bit better, just a little bit better than that. They are more fun if you try to read it with thinking of the character voices in your head. Winnie the Pooh and Tigger both had just amazing voices in the cartoons. So it's a little bit better if you're reading them like that. And then lastly, we have Mickey Mouse. It's also a new story, and it was done by Paul Murray. And I think his artwork is actually pretty good here for this being one of his last, probably his last story. It's a little bit more involved, a little bit better than what I've normally seen. This is more reminiscent of what he did in the 50s, I think, when he was first starting to do the Mickey Mouse stories. And it's a little bit of an interesting story. It's got the Phantom Blot in it. Unfortunately, by then they had kind of made the Phantom Blot into a bland villain, but he uses remote control planes to rob a jewelry store. The first one smashes the window, and then the second one comes in with a hypno wheel on the propeller. So it hypnotizes the clerks into filling the plane with gems. And that's how he commits his robberies. And of course, Mickey teams up with Chief O'Hara and Goofy to foil his plot. And that was it. No text story in this last issue. Daffy Duck ad on the back, and then that was it. So those are the ones I read today. I don't think I can pick a favorite, honestly. These were all really good. They were. Hulk was a fantastic story, lots going on. It wasn't just a mindless battle issue like so many of them are. Walt Disney Comics and Stories had, all 4 stories I'd never read before. It wasn't just a bunch of reprints, even though it was the last issue. The Jungle Twins were much more interesting than I would have ever given them credit for. And Convergence, The Flash, was a really nice look at Barry Allen, at the end of his, before he sacrificed his life during Crisis on Infinite Earths. So this along with the Detective Comics Convergence that I showed a little bit of last time, and then this one. Those are probably my two favorite issues so far, because they, basically they showed characters that I cared about back, earlier, before Crisis on Infinite Earths hit and changed everything. So, and I loved Crisis on Infinite Earths. I still think it's the best superhero comic book series I've ever read. But I don't like what it did to the DC Comics line, where it just decimated All-Star Squadron. They canceled All-Star Squadron. They canceled Blackhawk. They canceled, it just, Roy Thomas lost interest in the books that he was doing for DC after that. And, it just changed everything. And I did like, the reboot of like Superman after that. That was fun, with John Byrne doing Superman. Those were good. But then eventually, they started reintroducing all of the elements that they were quoting getting rid of for, clarity's sake. And then they were trying to claim that, the DC universe was too confusing for everybody, and that's why they did Crisis to change that. But then they started introducing all those elements all over again, which just destroyed everything, because they didn't know how to do it, and they did it badly. And anyway, it just seemed like they started rehashing old ideas instead of going forward with their own thing. So anyway, that has nothing to do with these books. These were great. I loved all of them, and really happy to have all of these in my collection. I'll definitely be looking out for more Jungle Twins, which is, I would pick up anyway just because they're old, but I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it. The writing was top notch. So, and also the Hulk, I'll have to start paying more attention to the issues around that time period. I had no idea that there were any issues that I would like that much. So thanks for watching. Tomorrow we're going to jump back into the third box and final box from the Comics Den garage sale. And I will see you then. Good night.